So Brian Miller is someone who takes experts and makes them world-class communicators. So Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Chris, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, you know just a little bit about communication to say the least. And of course, I'm joking by saying that your TED Talk I saw is just shy of 4 million views. And yet you bring a unique perspective because we're going to get into this a little bit. So we're not going to dive into it right now, but you have a background being a magician. So we're going to dive into that. What's some of the most common mistakes you see communicators make right out of the gate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the most common mistakes communicators make is asking the question, what do I want to say when they start to build a presentation or when they start to answer a question, instead of asking the question, what does the audience need to hear?
Mm,
So what typically happens is when an expert and whoever's listening to this, you're an expert in whatever you do relative to non-experts, right? And so we spend most of our time as people inside of an industry speaking with people who are not inside of our industry, right? And so that's expert to non-expert communication. That is the most common form of communication that we do. And so a lot of times what happens is because we're experts, we know our field so well. We know the edge cases, the cool, interesting stuff, that weird statistic that came out on this one study this year. We have these stories and anecdotes, and we're excited about it. And we just want to tell people all the cool, exciting stuff we know. And so when people ask us questions or when we go on podcasts or we get up to give a presentation, we just go on and on about the stuff that we think is interesting. But that's asking the question, what do I want to say? When really you should be asking, what does the audience need to hear? In other words, who are they? What is their pre existing context for what you're about to talk about? And most importantly, what do they want? What are they struggling with? What transformation would be useful to them? Asking those questions will help you communicate much more clearly
mm.
and earn buy-in and drive action much more effectively.
Man, that's so good. So ask a better question that's hyper focused on the audience, not just the message that I want to share, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, I mean, we call it the AFA principle, audience first always, right? Just audience first always. I mean, so much communication is speaker focused or speaker centric. And you can think about a scientist who is my go-to example is a former client, Dr. Jacob Levinson. He's mentioned in the book. He's awesome. But he's a marine biologist who specializes in animal telemetry, which is animal tracking technology. And he's on the cutting edge of the next generation of animal telemetry because he's been collaborating with NASA. Okay. So this guy knows a lot of stuff. He knows an insane amount of detail about a very, very niche subject that is very important to the world, but it may not be important to you, the
Mm.
listener, the audience. And so the problem is when someone like Jake, their natural inclination is to get up on stage and say, we gotta develop better tracking for sea turtles. And it's like the audience is not thinking, man, if only there was a solution for animal tracking for sea turtles. That's just not where people are, right? Unless he's talking to people who are exactly like him, and he never is. People in his audience, they may be scientists, but in different departments. They may be researchers or scientists in different divisions, but they also may be politicians. They may be science enthusiasts. He might be giving a presentation as a guest lecturer at an aquarium that's putting on and open to the public. So you have to ask, where are the people in the seats right now? Where are they coming from? What do they want out of life, or at least in relation to the topic that I'm an expert in? And then we build up our communication from there.
Man, that's good. So your background being a magician, that's so unique. It's not like you come from a background of just pure leadership of giving
Yeah.
keynotes all the time. So tell us, how did being a magician help shape you to have the perspective you have to land you where you're at today with helping so many experts communicate more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, so it is a weird background. I was a full-time professional magician for a decade. Started doing backyard barbecues, local restaurants, ended up touring the world, corporate events, high-end private events, hundreds of colleges and universities. And the thing that you learn as a magician is, I call it the magician's dilemma. When you're a magician, the most important part of being a magician is not tricking people. It is connecting with people, because
Mm.
fooling people is easy, but making people enjoy being fooled is hard. So the only way that you can create actual magic is to understand the perspective of the audience, right? The problem for magicians is that when you're a magician, you can't see the magic because you know how the trick works. You have too much knowledge. And so there's no magic when I do a magic trick, right? Not for me. There's only magic for the audience. And the key to this is this: you need to understand what perspective the audience is coming in with. You need to know what they think, what they believe. You need to know what they're feeling. And visually, as a magician, you learn that just what people are seeing and what you're seeing, like half the time when I'm doing a trick, I can literally see the secret because of my actual visual perspective, but they cannot see the secret. There's also emotional perspective. When I'm doing a magic trick, I might feel like the audience might feel wonder or amusement or frustration. There's lots of things you might be feeling. At the same time, I'm feeling focus or dedication. They're not even the same feeling at the same moment. And so, as a magician, you learn that you cannot create magic unless you truly understand the perspective of the audience. And that is what I pulled in to speaking when I became a speaker. And it is now the foundation of what I teach speakers, which is you have to understand the perspective of the listener. You're never speaking into the void,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's so many communicators that talk or write as if there's no particular listener or no particular reader. They're just writing, they're just speaking, and they don't have in mind who is the person on the other side of this communication.
That's so good. It reminds me of at different business networking groups. It's the elevator pitch, like summarize your life and who you serve in 15 seconds, go now, spontaneously. And I on another episode that I was listening to in preparation for today, you mentioned how you've helped so many people identify and speak to their target audience. So
Mhm.
today I'm wondering, would you be willing to share a little bit of the framework, how you help someone specifically narrow down their target audience as far as their who they serve? And then I'm wanting to know if you would be willing to share some of the framework that gets into how do you develop a keynote that lands because one is focused on the audience, not just the
Yeah.
message they want to share. Does that sound
Yeah,
like a plan?
absolutely.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, so let's take that. Let's take them in order. Let's take that first question first. Let's talk about that kind of. As soon as you said business networking, I'm like, oh, there is no worse place on earth to do networking than at a business networking event. It is
Right.
just the whole night feels like everyone has it in their head that whoever hands out the most business cards wins. It's like there's no prize for handing out your business card. Uh, and the roundtable they do at those events is a perfect example. You forget 95% of everybody who introduced themselves because people lead with what? They lead with their title,
Mhm.
right? It gets to you, and well, first they lead with their name, which is hysterical to me, as if anyone cares. Like, it is not relevant information. When you have 15 seconds, your name is the least important thing about you. like, so like people are like, I'm Brian Miller. I was born in Buffalo. Nobody cares. So you imagine it gets to you in a networking roundtable, and what people will do is they say, I'm Brian Miller and I'm an attorney, right? I'm Brian Miller, I'm an accountant, right? And people are like, I don't care because I wasn't thinking about accountants. I don't find accountants interesting. So imagine if instead you introduced yourself. Let's use human connection as an example. So me as a speaker, when I give my own speeches, I speak on human connection. I do corporate culture, I talk in healthcare and colleges and universities, things like that. So now imagine we're at a business networking event and it comes to me and they say, introduce yourself. And I go, hi, I'm Brian. I'm a human connection speaker. What is that? That's nothing. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't tell anybody anything about what I do. And I know because I used to make this mistake in Ubers when the Uber driver would say, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm a human connection speaker. And we would drive in silence into the hotel. right? There was no follow-up question. What are you going to ask me? So instead, don't answer with your title. Answer with the problem that your work solves.
Mm.
So instead of me going, "Hi, I'm Brian, I'm a human connection speaker," somebody says, "What do you do?" I go, "So, you know how these days it kind of feels like everybody's talking and nobody's listening? Like we're all shouting past each other?" Right? Now you nodded literally as soon
Yeah.
as I did that, right? The
We did.
podcast
Yeah.
couldn't hear you, but you nodded. That's what people do when you start with the problem. They go, "Yes, I do know that. I have felt that. I am familiar with that problem." What you've
Mhm.
done is you've given them context
Mhm.
within which your title is about to exist. So if I go, "Hey, so you know how these days it really feels like everyone's talking, nobody's listening, we're all shouting past each other," and people go, "It does feel like that." I go, "Right. So I'm a human connection specialist or I'm a human connection speaker." Now, that title is relevant within the context of the problem I set up. It makes sense now. And then
Mhm.
after that, I can give them my one liner, which is typically what I do, who it's for, and why it matters, all in one sentence. So my one liner would be, okay, so you know how it feels like everyone's talking, nobody's listening, we shouting past each other. Yeah, it feels like that. Great. I'm a human connection specialist. I help leaders at organizations attract and retain top talent and generate sustainable repeat business by building a culture where everybody feels valued for their contributions.
Mm.
So, in the span of 15 seconds, instead of "My name's Brian, I'm from Buffalo originally. Last year I moved to Virginia. I am a human connections speaker. I talk at companies and I do," which just a bunch of bullet pointed facts.
Mhm.
This is actually making an argument. Problem you're familiar with. Yes. Relevant to you. Got it. Title. Okay. I understand what this guy does. And then here's who I do it for and why it matters. And it happens all in 15 seconds. And it's enough information stated clearly enough that people can ask you an interesting follow up question. That's the metric. Can somebody ask you an interesting follow up question after you introduce yourself? If the answer is yes, your introduction did its job.
Man, that's so good. Okay, so when it comes to internalizing, because everybody's different. Some people are flashcard learners. Some people say things over and over. What's your best tips to help internalize something like that once you craft it in a way that lands well?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so you're asking about like literally just like memorize, like you use the word internalize, which is the right word, by the way.
Mm,
People ask about memorizing all the time. It's like memorizing is easy. Just say it over and over again. It's just,
yeah,
people go, "Well, should I use like a mind palace?" I'm like, just say it over and over again. It's like cramming for a Spanish test in sixth grade.
right.
You can do this. There are there are times when people go, "I just don't know how I'm going to memorize this." I'm like, there are people who do Shakespeare on Broadway. If the, it's 3 hours of someone else's words and you're not allowed to get a single word right. I
Yeah,
promise if they can do it, you can memorize 3 sentences about yourself. Give me a
right.
break. So it's just like, so memorizing is the start. Internalizing really just comes from going way past rote memorization. Like our clients who give TED Talks, right? They memorize, a TED Talk is 1,500 to 2,000 words. So they memorize it, which
Mhm.
simply means you know how to get the words out, right? You can get it right. That's what memorizing is. And a mentor of mine in Magic used to say, an amateur practices until they get it right. That's memorizing. And he used to say a professional practices until they can't get it wrong.
So
That's
good.
internalizing. So you just keep going and doing it and you get reps, right? I
Mhm.
mean, flight time, stage time, air time, reps is the only way to really embody this. So my recommendation is if you spend an hour thinking through what is the problem that I solve that anyone would understand. That's the key. I don't know who I'm talking to in line at Starbucks. I don't know the Uber driver. I don't know their context. I don't know what they already know. So what's the problem that I solve that would make sense to anybody? Okay, I got that. Title, you should already know that. And then, one sentence like I work with these kind of people, I help, I teach, whatever, these kind of people or these kind of organizations to achieve some kind of result by doing some kind of action. I help people achieve a thing by doing a thing, right? You get all that on the page. You write it perfect, then you say it out loud. You will need to change some words when you do this, because what reads well on paper doesn't always feel right to say out loud, right? Spoken language is different. Nudge the words so it sounds good conversationally, and then just spend an hour and just say the damn thing 150 times. Just do it.
Put
Just
in
do
the
it
rest.
until you've got it. And
Yeah.
then use it. Use it the next time, no matter how awkward you think it is. I promise, not only is it not awkward, you will watch people light up because they actually know how to respond to it. And then, because they get it and they ask you interesting questions, they're going to want your info. They're going to want your card. They're going to go, oh, my sister,
Mhm.
she's on a board of a nonprofit who has an event once a year. They could really use someone like you. They will have all these ideas because they actually understood what you said, who it's for, and why it matters. It's a beautiful thing.
That's good. I love the title of your book, Brian, the one-page keynote. That's so
Yeah.
intriguing to me because anytime I've done a keynote, whether it's for a church or some type of organization, I have multiple pages. So right away, your title intrigued me. So share with us some of the framework that I'm sure is in your book. I just got my personal copy yesterday. I'm excited to dive
Woo-hoo.
into it. So how do you take a keynote that could be 20 minutes or hour and a half and condense it to its one page? That's so interesting.
Yes. So what I don't mean is make the font size 3 and write the whole thing out on one page. It's a terrible idea. Don't do that. So first of all, you're probably not going to memorize a keynote the way we just talked about. You could memorize a TED talk or an introduction, a businessing networking introduction. Businessing, is that what I said? A networking introduction. Uh, because I usually say memorize up to about a TED talk. So like 15 minutes. Like if up to
Mhm.
about 15 minutes, memorize, internalize that thing cold. Once you're at a keynote length, 15 to 20 minutes is the minimum of what I would consider a keynote. They're very commonly 30, 40, or even an hour, right? So the average person speaks at 150 words a minute. I clearly speak faster than that. We can hear that. But the average person speaks at 150 words a minute. If you're on stage for 30 minutes, it means you're going to say 4,500 words. You're probably not going to memorize them word for word. However, the system that I lay out in this book is once you understand how to build a speech according to this system, you can then put just the top level points that bring you down the system in an outline format on a single page. And once you know the system, that single line will be enough for you to do the whole next 5, 6, 8 minutes of the talk. You will
Mm.
be able to do it once you understand the system. So the first time you use the system in the book to write out your keynote, you're not going to get it onto one page on your first try. It's going to take you 10 pages to understand how to lay out a keynote like this. But
Mhm.
when you understand the framework, then you can scale it back to just the top level on a single page if you needed to. Having said that, we've done this with hundreds of people. Most of the time, once they're at a point where it could be one page, they have it memorized. They don't need it.
Mm. Is the framework another way to say that? Would that be the packaging? How you package the content?
Yeah. So if you want to think of it from a marketing perspective,
Mhm.
the no, I wouldn't say it's the packaging. It was a good
Okay.
question. I wouldn't say it's the packaging. I would actually say exactly what this book is not about is the packaging. So I would
Oh.
say um, vocal presence, intonation, cadence, rhythm, performance beats,
Mhm.
the slides that you use, if you're going to put videos or GIFs, interaction, all that stuff is the packaging.
Okay.
That's the like, let's make this sexy.
Mhm.
Let's make this fun. Let's make this um, like superficially engaging. But this book is about real engagement. It's about true engagement. It's about buy-in. It's about can I get like the subtitle of the book is how to design a speech that works every time, no charisma required. The whole point is that this speech design system works even if you're boring. If you just deliver a monotone version of this speech, if you build it according to my system, the speech will do its job. You won't get high marks for charisma. People won't go, God, that was the most amazing speaker I've ever seen. It will do its job. And its job is to drive action. Its job is to get the audience to do something new as a result.
Mm.
That is the metric that I use for effective speaking. Most people you talk to, their metric for did a speech go well is did people clap? Did they laugh? Did they come up and say that was great? Did they give you top marks in the feedback forms, right? That's usually people's metric. I think those are all good, useful, fun metrics, but I don't think any of them tell me if the speech was effective. What tells me if the speech was effective is if people actually did something new as a result, if change
Mm.
happened. And if no change happened, like, pardon my language, I know this is potentially a godly audience, but like, the hell are we doing up there? Taking people's time for 30 minutes. Like, it takes a tremendous amount of confidence bordering on ego to say, everyone shut up and listen to me for 30 minutes. And if we're not creating change in any of that time, I just think, what are we doing? Right? So I have a really high bar for what is a successful speech. And I tell event planners this all the time. I tell them, listen, send the same feedback forms that you sent to your attendees, send those forms again 3 months later. I guarantee you get different results. The highest ranked speakers the day of the speech will be the charismatic ones, the funny ones, the superficially engaging ones, the ones doing jump kicks and interacting with the audience. 3 months later, the highest ranked speakers will be the ones that people actually used what they taught.
Mm.
That's the metric.
So going after transformation, not
Yeah.
entertainment, but transformation, life, people doing things differently as a result.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of
Yeah.
this if your listeners are in any sales capacity or anything like that. You think of it like this: you do a sales call, and you guys just vibe, right? They're laughing, you're getting along. You're like, oh, I also have a dog, and oh, my brother went to school where you went to school. You do that whole thing. You leave your friends. That was a great meeting. If they don't buy your product, was it a successful sales meeting?
Mm. Good
Right,
point.
of course not. If they don't, or at least refer you to someone who does buy, right? The metric is not, did we have a good time together? That's for
Mhm.
friendships, right?
Good
Professional
point.
communication, it's nice if we have a good time together. It's more important that people take action on your ideas. That's
Mm.
how we change the world.
That's good. So talk to me more about the framework as far as like here's step number one, because my struggle,
Yeah.
Brian, is that I have number one, just full transparency, I've winged it way too much. And yet what got me here is not going to get me there. I'm
Yeah.
looking to become a more effective communicator. So I think with communication, it's the one thing that as I become more effective, my relationship with my wife gets better,
Mhm.
relationship with my family in
Yeah.
general, my children, my business, like it's the one thing that causes everything else to potentially get better. So I'm all in on communication. My challenge is that I have ideas and thoughts and I could just wing it. But what happens is I start chasing these rabbits, right? Where I say something and it reminds me of this thing. And before I know it, I'm over here chasing a rabbit that has nothing to do with the main point that I was trying to make. So I would love if you could break it down into some steps to help me
Yeah.
logically digest the framework.
Yeah, totally. So let's do it. Before you even dive into the framework for the speech itself, the number one thing that's going to help you with exactly what you just said, which is I'm chasing rabbits, I'm getting excited, I'm going on a tangent. And then you forget to finish that point you were making.
Right.
I saw it. I mean, listen, there's a TED talk out there that said, I'm going to show you the 5 things. The speaker at the beginning said, I'm going to show you the 5 things about X, Y, and Z, whatever the topic was. And then they only did 4. That's in a TED talk. That's not, they
Mhm.
forgot the 5th one because they just lost the plot halfway through, right? So here's how you keep that from ever happening. And then we'll talk about the framework for designing the speech. You
Okay.
first start with a filter statement. We call this a filter statement because it's a 1 sentence statement that you're going to filter every decision you make for the rest of the talk through it. And it's a
Hmm.
version of something we talked about earlier with the networking introduction, which is some version of this talk is for audience, right? Ideal audience. Who are they? This talk is for these people to achieve what's the big result that they're going to get, the end goal that they're hoping for by doing something. Okay. This talk is for a certain type of people to get something by doing something. Put that sentence down on the page and stare at it. If you're working in a document, we make our clients put it in the header. You know how you go up into the header of a Google Doc or whatever, Word,
Right.
and then it shows up on every single page. So it forces them to look at that sentence on every single page as they're working through their speech. You have to see it over and over. And so what happens is you go, okay, this talk is for students, college students. So let's say I'm in a university. This talk is for incoming freshmen. Get even more specific. Or even more specific, this talk is for socially anxious incoming freshmen. Like add a modifier. Who is this for? See how much more specific that got just by adding modifiers?
Yeah.
This talk is for socially anxious incoming freshmen who want great opportunities for their life and career, right? Like impact outcome, to help them get great opportunities for their life and career by learning to make meaningful connections with anyone they meet.
That's
Okay.
good. That's specific.
So it's very specific. I know it is because I do that keynote, right? Like I have that talk. I do it. It's called Lucky on Purpose. So that for me, if I'm working on this talk and I get halfway through it and I'm going, oh, there's this funny story. It gets a big laugh every time. I should tell that story. And I put it in there. And then I look at that sentence and I go, does this story immediately and obviously support that sentence? Immediately and obviously. If the answer is no, it has no business being in this talk, no matter how funny it is, because it's going to distract the audience. It's going to pull me and them off of the main point, off of the core message. So the very first thing that I would tell you or anybody to do is build that sentence before you start writing a presentation. And also, by the way, we do this before a social media post, a newsletter email. You could do this before a YouTube video. You go, who is it for? What are they going to get? What do they have to do to get it? Right? Do those things, have a sentence, and spend an appropriate amount of time building the sentence relative to whatever you're doing. If you're just going to make a quick Instagram post that's going to be gone by tomorrow, take 10 seconds to write the sentence out. If you're building a keynote speech that you're going to deliver to 1,000 people and it's going to be recorded, you should spend an hour thinking through this sentence before you write a word of the speech. You know what I mean? Like appropriate amount of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Before we even get into like the framework, does that I would bet that solves 80% of the problems for people before they even start writing a speech.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because yes, pre-deciding who I'm speaking to, I could see where that would become the filter. That would help me stay within parameters to stay focused on them.
Yeah, it's guardrails, right?
Oh, there we go. Yeah. That's good.
Like there's a lot of people that think, people think, like frameworks or structure, constrains us. It's like, no. Structure liberates you. Structure gives you the ability to do what you're there to do. When you have no guardrails, you can do anything. That's so much worse. So, having said that, do you want to talk through the structure of an actual speech?
Let's do it. Yes.
Awesome. So the conceit of this book and of my whole framework, the one-page keynote framework, we can just call it the OPK framework, is that a speech is not merely a series of interesting points. It is a sequence of interesting answers to questions the audience is already asking. A speech is a sequence of answers to questions the audience is already asking. So what are the questions they're asking? What order are they asking them in? If you simply build a speech by answering those questions in that order, it will always work. That sounds really obvious, but no one builds speeches like this. Right? So, what's the first question? Like, Chris, you're in an audience. You've been at Forward, right?
Okay. I have not been.
You've not been to Forward.
I have not.
All right. Okay. So think about the last event you were at where there were speakers on stage, right?
Okay.
Yep. You're sitting in the audience, you're on your phone, finishing email, making an Instagram post, checking in with your, spouse, kids, whatever it is. And they announce a speaker and you clap because you're supposed to, social contract kicks in, right? You've got your phone in your hand, you're supposed to put it away, speaker walks on stage, what are you thinking in your head at this moment?
Is what they're going to say meaningful or relevant to me? Doesn't matter.
It is literally the first question. That is how the book starts. That is the first question in the framework. The first question the audience asks themselves is this relevant to me? Is this worth my time? In other words, do I need to pay attention to this?
Mm-hmm.
It's the first question. Should I pay attention to this? And I got to tell you something. If you've watched speakers, you know 90% of speakers do not answer this question. Or they give you a very clear answer. No, this is not worth your time. You do not need to pay attention to this. And most speakers do it by accident. They do it by talking about themselves, their name, their title, their accolades, their credentials. None of that's interesting or relevant to you. You've never heard of them anyway. Plus, they were just introduced. We heard all that just now.
Right.
So you go back to your phone. Or they make the scientist, they do the thing we talked about scientists do a lot, and many very technical experts do, which is they immediately start talking about a conclusion they care about. We need better animal tracking technology for sea turtles. And you're not there, right? It's so far removed from where you are in your head that you're like, oh, this isn't for me at all. I'm out. So the first question that you have to answer, the first words out of your mouth when you walk on stage, have to answer the question, will this be worth my time? Is this relevant to me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to pay attention to this? Which means you have to begin your speech with something the audience already cares about, not something you think they should care about, not something you're going to make an argument for, something that they accept as true and valuable without you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when I get up and give a talk on message clarity, communication, things like this, first words out of my mouth, I open with a magic trick, but that's because I'm special and I get to use magic tricks. So the first words out of my mouth in the actual speech are, we all want our ideas to spread. Right? There's no one in any audience that I've been invited to speak to about message clarity or communication who doesn't want that. Right? We all want our ideas to spread. And so at least everybody goes, that's true. I want that. Right? In students, the student talk I talked about, right? First words out of my mouth. Everyone here wants a great opportunities, right? We all want great opportunities. Every student who's an incoming freshman staring down the next 4 years of their life and probably student debt that's going to cripple them for the rest of their life is here because they want opportunities. They wouldn't be here if they weren't hoping for something new, something, to happen. So if I go, we all want great opportunities, every student's like just nodding. Yes, that's true. That's what an opening statement looks like. That's what we call a premise. We've established something that answers the question, is this relevant to me? Should I pay attention to this? What would you do, Chris? So like, imagine you're getting up in front of an audience. You've given plenty of talks. You're winging them, so you're not going to wing them anymore. What would you open with that would say, yes, this is relevant to you, the audience?
I would say, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm renting out a coffee shop and having a group of about 25 entrepreneurs in the room. I would, most of them want to grow their business and yet not necessarily work more hours to do it. So I think it would be something along those lines. Like all of us. There we go. Yeah.
Literally what you just did. That is a premise. You went, we all want this, but unfortunately that. Want problem. Want problem pairs are one of the easiest ways to do a premise. We all want to grow our business, but what was the problem?
But we don't want to necessarily just work more hours in order to do that.
Yeah, right. We all want to grow our business, but we don't want to have to work so many hours that we don't get to enjoy our lives or whatever, right? Right. If those are the first words out of your mouth, and I mean literally, don't introduce yourself. Don't say hello. Don't say, boy, aren't we having a good time? How are you doing today? How are you doing today? None of this matters. It's not important, right? You can do the pleasantries later once they're bought into the speech. You can thank the organizer at the end right before your final point. That's the best time to thank an organizer. You don't thank them when you walk on stage. It's wasted words. Right? Even just saying hello. It's like, we all know hello. We assume hello. We don't need that. And just for what it's worth, quick side note. The worst one, the very worst way to start a speech. You cannot say before I begin. Just say it with me. You cannot begin before you begin. It's not possible. If your first words out of your mouth are before I begin, that's it. That was the beginning. That was the beginning. So you can't begin before you begin. If you begin before you begin, I will find you. I will haunt you. Don't do it.
I'm glad I said that I'm learning, because I'm 99% sure I said that earlier. So I'm here to learn. Thank you for that, Brian. That's good. Those things make a difference, though, you know?
They do. They add up. And it's just, especially at the beginning, you get a lot more leeway 10, 15 minutes into a speech when people are bought in, when they're engaged, you can go off on a tangent, you can play with the audience, but they have to already believe that this is worth their time. You can do longer stories. You can do more creative stuff later where they're not quite sure where you're going, but they like you and they're interested in this. So they're willing to go on that mystery journey through this winding story with you. Not at the beginning. First words out of your mouth. What do they want? What are they struggling with? What are they afraid of? What do they believe? Say something that they already agree with that is important to them. That's how you get in.
Man, that's so good. You're flipping the script on my regular cadence, Brian, because a lot of times if somebody said, Chris, I have this opportunity for you, I immediately could just go into, okay, what's the one main point I want to make, and then what's the one main concept, and what's the three supporting points. And yet you're challenging me on this, which I love, because it's like, okay, what's the commonality in the room that would pull us all together? Because people are trying to figure out right out of the gate, should I even listen in?
Yes. Have you noticed in the news recently how a whole bunch of commencement speakers at college campuses mentioned that AI is the next revolution and got booed, like audibly booed by the entire group of graduating college students? Have you seen this? It's happened a bunch of times in the news recently. It's been national news. National news, media coverage, CNN, they're all covering it. Multiple different commencement speakers within the same couple of days around the country who had been asked, right, to give the commencement speech to a group of 21, 22-year-olds who just spent 4 years in college and are now heading into the real world. Their friends and family are all there to watch them graduate. And these commencement speakers, almost exclusively business leaders, obviously, at some point in their speech, said with great enthusiasm that AI is the next industrial revolution, and the entire audience of thousands of college students booed them. You've never seen a commencement speaker get booed before. It happened multiple times last week across the country. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that those speakers were only thinking about what they wanted to say. They were not thinking about the audience at all. This was not a slip of the tongue. This was not being tone deaf. Commencement speeches are written word for word, workshopped over and over again, and delivered from a word for word script. They planned to say this, which means they didn't think, do I think that thousands of students who have just graduated from a liberal arts institution would be excited that there's a new technology that's making the 1% richer and eliminating all of the entry-level jobs that college students typically get?
I see what you're saying. They were focused on themselves and their opinion.
Right. And here's the thing. I've talked about this with some friends, and I've had some friends say, yeah, but like students should, like that's just students being blind to reality. They should be paying attention to AI or learning how to engage with it. I'm like, yes, they should. One, it's a commencement speech, not the time. Commencement speech is vaguely inspirational. You are all awesome. Go get them. That's what a commencement speech is, not the time. Secondly, if you were going to argue for why the student should be paying attention to AI or engaging with it, you need to scaffold up to that. You need to start with something they care about. Like, for example, opportunity. You could have started with, we all want great opportunities. We want to do human work that matters and be valued for it and paid appropriately. If you started with that and everybody was nodding, you could eventually make the case that ignoring AI is going to be counter to what you're trying to get, that you actually need to understand it if you want to work within the industry, blah, blah, blah. You could have made that case. None of them did that. It was completely disrespectful to the audience, and they got booed appropriately.
Yeah. And then no matter, I don't see how somebody could recover from a statement like that, because now they've already decided I'm out of this one.
Oh
So there's
yeah, there's
recovery.
no PR
Yeah.
disaster.
I
Yeah,
see what you're
total
saying
PR
with that.
disaster.
So
Yeah.
what's next in your framework then, Brian? What's the next step?
Yeah, so basically after somebody asks, after the audience thinks to themselves, should I pay attention to this? Is this relevant to me?
Mhm.
So you answer yes by giving them a good premise. The next thing they ask is, does it really matter? In other words, just because I care about this doesn't mean I need to engage with it right now. I bet in your house, do you own a house, you rent or something?
Yeah, we actually have a home on 5 acres. I'm
Oh,
sitting in it
great.
right now. Yeah.
Okay, you've got a
Yeah.
home on 5 acres. Now,
All right.
my guess is that somewhere in those 5 acres is something that's broken, that's been broken for a while, or not even broken, but just I wish that were different. I should get around to that.
Sure.
And you just haven't. And it's
My
gone
wife has
on
the
way
list.
longer. What is,
Yes.
yeah,
My wife has the list. Yeah.
has a list, right? Do you have
Yeah.
is there a specific example that would be fun to talk about?
We have a sliding a sliding set of doors off our master bedroom, and there's a piece of wood from where the hot tub was previously, where there's some wood rot happening. So we have a few boards that need to be replaced, for example.
There you go. And how long has that been there like that?
Few years.
Few years. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I said to you, hey, Chris, do you have any sliding doors in your house that have some wood, like rotting wood, or any rotting wood in your house that needs to be replaced? And you would be like, yes. So you would answer, yes, this is relevant to me.
Right.
The problem is, just because it's relevant to you doesn't mean you want to solve it. You've let it go for 3 years. It's never crept high enough on your urgency list,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's never been
Right.
urgent enough for you to deal with it. It's a low priority item. So, as speakers, we can grab the audience's attention with a premise. We can get them to go, yes, I care about this topic. But unless we remind them or convince them that it should be at the top of their priority list, that it's urgent, they will still tune out. There's lots of things that are important to people, but they're not urgent. So the second thing you have to do is establish the stakes. What's at stake for you, the audience, if you don't solve this problem, if you don't get what you want, right? So
Okay. I'm
go
trying.
back to your example with the group. You got a coffee shop, 25 business owners coming in. So you establish the premise like we did earlier.
Right.
What's at stake for those business owners if they don't grow their business?
Getting stuck, therefore getting discouraged, ultimately losing profitability, business growth.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a bunch of things, right? And
Mhm.
so what you can do is you don't need to do what like sales closing people tell you to do, where they're like, you want to twist the knife, you want to raise the stakes. It's manipulative, it's gross, it's nonsense, and the world is so negative right now. People don't want more negativity. You don't want to do that. What's the thing is though, people know what's at stake for the most part. You mostly just need to remind them. If you remind them, it goes like, I bet today you're going to be thinking about replacing those boards because I just reminded you, right?
Yeah.
You're going to go, I probably could just knock that out this weekend if I had to, right? Simply being reminded is often enough. And even if you need to dig in a little bit, all you typically need to do is make sure people understand what's actually at stake, not just in a vague way. My example for this is in my previous house, when we bought it, the fridge, the water line was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that when we bought it, and I had a fridge technician come over and look at it. And he's like, yeah, water line's broken. This is what it would cost to fix it. And I was like, so I just can't use the water thing on the outside? And he's like, nah, can't use the water thing unless we fix the water line. I was like, all right, I'll just keep using a Brita filter, right? Like inside the fridge. No, but I don't feel like fixing it, right? It's just didn't. I just bought a house. I don't need to spend more money fixing the fridge. And that was fine. And then about a year later, I was on the road. For a couple of days doing some gigs. I came home and my kitchen was flooded. My kitchen was flooded because the water line which was broken, had started leaking. And so then I called the technician and also a plumber and also floor repair people and also all these things. And when I called a different technician at that point, he's like, man, like they should have just replaced this back, when you knew it was broken. I said, well, I thought all that, like the only consequence of that was I couldn't use the water thing. He's like, oh no, when these things are broken, eventually they're going to leak. I'm like, see, if somebody had told me that the first time, if they had made sure that I understood the stakes for real,
Mhm.
at some point, this will leak when you least expect it. It will flood your kitchen. You will end up paying thousands and have water damage underneath your floor. I would have spent $200 and fixed the water
See
line,
what you're saying.
right?
Yeah.
So either remind them of the stakes or make sure they truly understand what's at stake. If you
Mhm.
do those two things, just those two questions, is this relevant to you? Does it really matter? If you help them answer yes to both of those, you've basically got them for the rest of the speech. And that all happens in the first 60 seconds on stage.
That's so good. That's such a valid point. Okay. I'm tracking with you. Because it's one thing, I see what you're saying as far as and especially sometimes in sales where you hear like, push in on the pain, exaggerate the pain. And okay, I appreciate your approach, Brian. And the story of the refrigerator is a great example where if that
Mm,
technician would have just made you aware of consequences from delaying it,
right.
that's not being a slimy salesperson. That's just sharing with you the reality. And now you can make a more educated decision.
That's right. It's actually
Yeah,
generous because
exactly. That's
as
good.
an expert, you understand your field or your topic at a level of nuance that non experts never will. You know the
Mhm,
edge cases, you also know unexpected or unintended consequences of doing things or not doing things, right? Longer term results or consequences for things that non-experts would never think of. In
mhm,
fact, there are things that seem like a good idea. There are actually solutions to people's problems that work in the short term, but actually hurt them in the long term. And real experts know what those things are. And it is your responsibility to make sure that your listeners know, hey,
mhm.
you might think about trying this. It's a good idea. It actually does work. The problem is it only works for about a week and a half. And then it's even worse after that. It's your responsibility to make sure people understand that stuff.
That's good. That's being, like you said, the expert. That makes a lot of sense. So what's the next step in your
Yeah.
framework?
So basically, at this point, they've bought in, right? I would consider
Mhm,
that buy in, not to taking your solution. We can consider this engagement, right?
mhm,
Attention is just making sure the first question says this is relevant. That's attention. By the time you're done with the stakes, you've started to earn their engagement. And then people ask a question, and it's an interesting one. They ask themselves, all right, but why should I listen to you specifically? This is
mm,
the time of the speech when people start going, like, okay, this topic's important. And you know what? I should deal with this right now. But we have AI now at our fingertips. Why wouldn't I just go on ChatGPT or Claude or look up the world's most foremost expert? If I'm on stage talking about human connection, why wouldn't somebody in the audience, why wouldn't they just open up Google and find what Brene Brown or Simon Sinek has said about
good
this?
point.
Right? They're
Yeah,
way more famous than me. They're actually, and like Brene's a researcher, she's an academic. Why wouldn't you go look up that? Why this random former magician with large eyebrows? Why am I going to give him the next 45 minutes of my attention? And so the way you answer this question is by telling a story. This is the moment that you should tell what we call the story hook, which is the story that qualifies you uniquely to guide the audience through this. And that is when I would tell the story of being a magician. If I'm talking about human connection, and I've got everybody engaged, and then they're starting to think, but why this guy? Like, why? I've never heard of this guy. Who's this guy? And then I tell the story of how I used to be a magician. And this one time in a restaurant, I met a guy and I tried to do magic for him, and I didn't realize he was blind. And it was
mm,
incredibly embarrassing. And I had to figure out how to create magic for a blind person on no notice. And so I tell this story. It's in my TED Talk. I'm not going to tell it here. It's a story that made my TED Talk famous. But when I tell that story, by the time I'm done with it, what I've done is I've said to the audience, yes, this speech is relevant to you. Yes, it's worth dealing with right now. And I am the only person who can guide you through it. Not because I'm actually the only person, but because I have a perspective that you could not get no matter where else you went. You
Mm,
want to learn about human connection through the perspective of a former magician? Here I am. I'm on stage. Where else are you going to get that? So
that's
this, Chris, is when you would tell a story from your career or your life that qualifies you as having a unique perspective where the audience goes, okay, many people could teach me about business development, certainly, but only Chris can teach it to me through this lens. So you got to tell a story at that point.
what are some of the questions to figure out the most, what are some of the questions to figure out the most effective story to share?
That is an excellent question. So my lead consultant, Francisco Mafuz, is a renowned story specialist. He's out of Barcelona. By day, kind of teaches at the MBA program at IESC. It's one of the top 10 MBA programs in the world. Teaches business professionals how to tell stories. By night, works with us and our clients. So I'm saying all that to qualify Francisco as I pass along his advice on how to find the right story. One of our favorite exercises for finding the right story is first, last, worst, best. So think about your topic and you go, what was the first time I can remember that I encountered this topic? When was the last time or the most recent time I encountered this topic? What was the best time? What was the worst time? And typically, one of those stories will be the one that makes sense to tell at this moment. First, last, worst, best. This is a great exercise for social media too. If you're like, I want to tell a story, I want to make a reel, I want to make a LinkedIn post, and you just go, I want to write about scaling, and you just go, okay, I got to write something about scaling. What am I going to write about scaling? You go, you write first, last, worst, best. You write scaling at the top of the page, and then you go, okay, what was and you just jot real quick. What's the first time I remember encountering the idea of scaling a business? When's the last, most recent time I? What was the best time? What was the worst time? Right, and you quickly get story ideas. So typically for this part of a keynote speech, it's either the first or the best. It's either the first time you encountered this because it's what set you off on this journey, or it was the best, the most successful time because it's when you learned to the core lesson that you're now here to teach the audience.
That's good. Okay. I'm tracking with you. That's helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
What's as far as your framework? Like I said, I just got I don't know how many steps we have, Brian. So
yeah. So those are the first three questions. I think in terms of one podcast, that's a substantial amount of stuff. What that does is that gets you all the way through the introduction of a speech. And that seems like we haven't covered that much. Like if you're on stage for 30 minutes, what we just did is cover the first 5 or 6 minutes of your speech. But what's important about that is that the introduction of your speech is by far and away the most important thing that you do.
Yeah.
You can actually flub a bunch of the stuff in the middle, but if you get the bookends right, if you get the opening, if you nail the opening so everyone in the room is with you, and if you nail the closing so that you remind them and give them the major takeaway that they can't forget, you can listen, you should get the middle, you should get it right. But even if you don't, as a magician, there was one show I did where I completely flubbed a trick in the middle of the show. Just got it wrong. Spent 5 or 6 full minutes of stage time building up to a piece of mentalism, a prediction. Tore the envelope open, all drama, silent, everyone's waiting on a pin drop. Open up the prediction, got it wrong. Imagine, right? I was like, what do you do? You're like, well, nothing's perfect. I don't know. You throw it away and I move on. I nailed the final trick of the show. Crushed it. Audience loved it. All rave reviews. They brought me back. You actually literally get something wrong in the middle. If you get the end right, you're in good shape.
On the other hand, okay.
Yeah.
It's most important.
Yeah.
When it comes to, you know how you can listen to somebody and it's like, oh, it's just so good. And then others, it's one person, an hour goes by so quick, and another person, every minute is just painful. When you find somebody that you resonate with, how do you go about perhaps studying them to figure out what it is that they do that maybe you could incorporate into what you do?
Yeah, that's a really good I gotta tell you, I have done hundreds of interviews about, like, this topic. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that. It's a really good
Hmm.
question. So, the question is essentially, if you're watching a speech and you're just vibing with you love it, this is working really well for you, how do you know, like, what to learn from it? Is that
Yeah, how do
kind
you
of the question?
study?
Like,
Yeah,
what do I
that's right.
take away from this?
Right.
So, your instinct, everybody's instinct is to take away the body language and the voice. The people go, "Oh, they're making lots of jokes," or "Notice how they move around the stage," or "Look at the way they engage. Look at how they slowed down. Look at how they got quiet." And then
Right.
they got louder for dramatic effect. People are always making those notes. The problem is that all of that stuff is good. It is useful. It's worth learning how to do, but only useful after you have a speech worth delivering.
Hmm.
That you're actually tracking the wrong metric for learning how to do this from the beginning. That what you should be doing is asking the questions, what did they talk about? What were the words? What were the topics? What were the flow of ideas? Right? Like, when I thought to myself, yeah, but what if, did they then answer that question as if they were reading my mind?
Hmm.
That's the mark of a brilliantly designed presentation. I personally believe that when most people feel that flow state with the speaker, when you're in the audience and you're listening, it just feels seamless.
Yeah.
Like time is floating by and you're in a bubble together. Most of the time, it is not because the presenter is funny and charismatic and all that stuff. It's helpful. Sure, it's helpful. It's usually because they're answering the questions that you're thinking as you're thinking them as if they're reading your mind. It just makes sense. You start to go, yeah, but I wonder if, and then they start answering it. And you go, yeah, but wouldn't that be cool if, and then they start talking about it. And it's just beautiful. That is design. It's not delivery, right? So I would say learn. Actually, the best way to do it these days, if it's a recording of the speech, if you have a recording, if it's on YouTube or something,
Mhm.
throw it into a transcription, like throw it into AI, get it transcribed, and then start to break it down. Look at the words. It's much harder than it is just watching it going, how does this feel to me? But I
Mhm.
guarantee you'll find what's actually working about the speech by breaking down what they're talking about and what order they're doing it in.
That's so good. Someone that I just am fascinated with is Myron Golden, who I met as a
Mm,
result of Omar
yeah.
when they did a podcast together. And you're exactly right, Brian. The thing that Myron Golden does well is he asks the questions I'm asking myself when I'm asking them. And
Yeah.
it keeps me captivated.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
because
good.
it feels like mind reading. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we are
exactly.
captivated by mind readers.
It,
It feels like magic,
that's
man.
it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's good. Well, Brian, this has been so good. And where could people go to find you and to grab a copy of your book?
Yeah, appreciate it. The one page keynote, you can go to onepagekeynote.com. You can even go to thepagekeynote.com. They both go to the same place because we knew people would go to both. Onepagekeynote.com is the easiest way. You'll find the book. You can, get the bonus resources, resource hub once you have the book. And then I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn primarily. I'm on Instagram begrudgingly. Brian Miller Speaks anywhere. I'm on Instagram because of people like Omar and Neil have
Nice.
insisted that I be on Instagram. But
Right.
LinkedIn's the main place for me. But yeah, onepagekeynote.com.
Okay. Brian, I appreciate you so much. And it's been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for having me. I'll see you at Forward this year.
Per, I'll have to figure out the dates. I'll have to look.
Are you in Vegas?
No, I'm not. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
You're in Kansas City, Missouri. Well, you
Yep.
could hop over to Vegas from there.
That's true. Yeah. Quick flight.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for